All right, thank you. We just had a great keynote about being curious and doing silly things with CPython, is what I got from that. And I hope you like that, because this will be exactly the same thing. So this, yeah, it's so nice to see a lot of people here. This is actually my third talk at PyCon Sweden. But my first one was in 2020, so that was during the pandemic. So that means it was digital. And I talked about web scraping, which is what I was working on at the time. And I apologized at some point during that presentation, because there was a lot more JavaScript than Python in that talk. And well, it was a Python conference, but it was accepted, and I think everyone had a good time. My second talk was 2021. It was still digital, and I talked about, well, a lot more about C++ and Java than Python, but somehow still I was accepted, and it was okay. And for this year, I thought, okay, how can I push the limit even further now? So I submitted a talk that contains basic code from the 1970s, an x86 assembler, and somehow still I am back on this stage. So I don't know what this says about me. I don't know what this says about you, but here we are. No, I'm really happy to be here. But I will be talking about these things. And in particular, I will be talking about jump on various versions of it that exist in assembler, or goto, as it's more commonly known in other languages. And I also want to talk about the process by which Python expands, grows, evolves, and also documents itself. And I want to bring those two concepts together with a sort of a practical example and talk about, okay, if I wanted something like a goto instruction in Python, not only what could an implementation actually look like, but what would the process be of actually, well, how would I propose it? How would we discuss it? How would we sort of arrive at a conclusion? Is this a good idea, or why is this a bad idea? But before we dive into that, and well, because I want the indexing to start at 0, maybe, just a quick introduction to me. My name is Marcus, as was mentioned. I'm a software engineer. I've been one for almost 10 years at this point. I'm currently working at Cognity, which is an education technology company here in Stockholm. Also spent a lot of time in the education sphere, done a lot of courses on IT and mathematics, and yeah, combining those two things, education and software engineering, I think a great way of doing that is just being on a stage like this. So that's very nice. But okay, so gotos. And I think most people are familiar with the concept. Luckily, we are all here because we share a love for a language that doesn't have them. But I want to start with a quote. This is from the late great computer scientist Edsger Dijkstra, who said the goto statement should be abolished from all higher level programming languages. This is from a paper from 1968, so I think it's a sort of a great introduction to me wanting to include them in 2024. But yeah, it's from a paper, and it talks about why it's such a bad and complicated construct, and sort of why we should use the modern constructs, as he puts them, like while loops and methods and stuff like this. But I thought a bit about, okay, how can we best illustrate why is a goto statement such a messy thing? What makes it so complicated to understand? So if we look at the next slide, all right, hang on, let me just scroll down for a bit. There we go. Right, that's it, right? So a goto is essentially a transfer of control from one line of the code base, so stop whatever is happening here, jump to this other part of the code base, and continue executing there. And the important distinction here is this is a one-way transfer, meaning there is no expectation that eventually control will return back to where we were before. Like when you call a method, this is a one-way transition, drop every context, and just continue going from this other place. And of course, this is a crucial concept in assembler, for example, and you see it in some older languages, but modern languages, usually Java, JavaScript, Python, etc., don't include this as a construct. We can see a very quick example of sort of a comparison. If I didn't have a while loop, well, I could do the same thing with a goto. So just say, well, as long as the condition is true, I'm going to enter this block, do all those things, and then so jump back to someplace before the if statement, and then keep doing this as long as the condition is true. And that's exactly what the while loop does, right? Now, a reasonable question to ask is why? Would anyone want something like a goto statement in Python? And I think that's a very good question. And there are valid use cases for there are valid arguments to be made. A classic one is if you have a nested loop, so something like this, and we're checking a condition, and if that condition is true, I want to break all of the loops and just keep running from outside the external one. There's no quick and nice way of doing exactly this. Of course, you can move it to a separate method and return from there, or have a helper Boolean flag or something. But it's hard to argue that those things are, syntactically smaller than just having a goto and just jump to outside the loop and continue from there. But this is not why I started looking into this. I want to tell you why I did that. So does anyone recognize these lines? Please raise your hands if you do. All right, nice. So a couple of people. So for the non-Swedish speakers, it says, you're standing on a bridge somewhere in Småland in Sweden. Behind your back, someone is water skiing. Church bell strikes 12. You see a house in front of you. These are the opening lines to a very classic text-based role-playing game called Stugan, the cottage. The original version is from 1978, and there are a couple of different versions. And I discovered this game when I was a child and played it a lot. So it's text-based, which means that, these are the only graphics that you see, apart from, I think there's a drawing of an elevator keyboard or something. But you write commands like go north, pick up keys, open door, etc. And the game describes the environment and keeps track of your inventory, etc. And I was very happy a few years ago because I discovered that the code for this game is available online, open source. And it's from 1978, so it's written in BASIC. So it looks a little something like this. Everything is global, and pretty much all of the logic or the structure is with gotos. So you see there on 9237, it just jumps to 9220 and keeps doing whatever it is. And this works because everything is in global scope, so you can really modify any variable from anywhere throughout many thousands of lines of code. And I had an idea at some point that, okay, I really like this game. Would it be possible to take this basic code, keep the gameplay, keep the content, but transform this into a Python code base? So something I can actually understand. A lot of this is not too difficult. Like a lot of the constructs, the if statements, sort of the syntax is very similar. But of course, the gotos, I don't have anything that's similar to this. And therefore, I can't really do any kind of automated transpilation here. So if I had something like a goto, then I could start to work with this. So with that, let's think about what would that process be if I wanted to actually extend the language. So let's talk about PEPs. And they stand for Python Enhancement Proposals. And the main documentation says, or the description says, that these are the primary mechanisms with which we would either propose major new features to the Python language, provide community input on existing issues in Python, but also act as official documentation for what are the design decisions that have gone into Python for future reference as well. These are all publicly available documents. They're available on peps.python.org. And some well-known examples that I think most of you may have heard about. So PEP 8, for example, is an old one, which is the sort of original official style guide for Python code. We have PEP 484, which is not everything, but a lot of things relating to all of the work that has gone into typing and type hints and type annotations, etc., over the past many years at this point. But also you find documents like PEP 719, which is just the release schedule for Python 3.13. If you go to the website, they look something like this. So this is everything I'm about to mention, by the way, is also documented in the very first PEP, so PEP number 1. And if you go there, you can read all of the fine details about this process as well. But I want to make this practical. So let's say we live in a fairy tale world, like I do, where I really want a go-to statement in Python to be able to continue doing my project. So how would that work? Well, all of these documents, they are markdown files hosted on a GitHub repo. So first step would be to write up a document following the same format. I've done one here called Introducing Goto, and make a pull request towards this GitHub repository. The usual format would start with an abstract saying, okay, this PEP proposes the introduction of a Goto keyword in Python, aimed at providing a method for unstructured jumps in code, intended for use cases where control flow might otherwise become convoluted, and Goto would be much better in some examples. So the abstract tells you everything you need to know. Why is this an idea? Why is this a good idea? And usually follows with some kind of rationale, a bit more on the why side of things. So there are scenarios and nested for loops. We just saw an example of that, where traditional, the modern way that we write code today wouldn't be as clear-cut as a Goto perhaps would be. And this would continue as well with both pros, but also the cons. Why is this a bad idea? And I think we can list a lot of examples on why this would be a bad idea. But this is a technical PEP as well, so I would include some specification on this. So, for example, what could the syntax look like if I had a Goto statement in Python? There's different ways of implementing this, and we're going to look at a few examples in a bit. And also reference implementation. So, not necessarily the final implementation, but like what could this look like, and so on. And I want to say here as well, it's not uncommon to see PEPs that say, this is the idea I have, these are the discussions we've had, I have no idea how to actually do this, right? The sort of intricate knowledge of C Python fundamentals is not any kind of prerequisite for drafting this kind of document. It goes through a lot of sort of discussions, eventually a lot of people are involved, and a lot of really smart core developers are usually sort of involved at some stage as well, right? So just the actual draft, it's not a prerequisite to have a reference implementation. And they usually talk a lot about stuff like backwards compatibility. So, okay, I'm introducing a new keyword here called goto. Are there other major packages out there that have a method called goto? How would this affect sort of the compatibility with them, or stuff that's been going on in previous versions of the language? Security implications, I think, would be, in general, just a mess with something like a goto, but never mind that. And also, how to teach this is a nice thing that usually pops up in a lot of PEPs, which is all about, okay, someone who is new to Python, either coming, new to programming or coming from a different language into Python. What is a good way of actually, teaching this new concept? Are there similarities in other languages? Are there, other concepts that can help relate and so on? So, yeah, from an education standpoint, this is a really nice thing to see, like being thought of from the very beginning. And also, this serves as sort of documentation for the future as well. So any kinds of rejected ideas or open issues are also documented here. There are many ways of doing one particular thing. What about all the other, variants or versions, and why were they rejected, and so on. But I want to talk a bit more about the technical specification of this. So, is it possible to create something like a goto instruction in Python? Even today, we saw some examples about hacking C Python and adding Swedish keywords and so on. But how far can we go with what's available today? And I want to look at two completely different sort of syntaxes for doing this, or ways of implementing this. So let's look at a short example. This is very similar to the code that we just saw, where I'm just printing numbers from start to stop, but instead of a while loop, I have an if statement, and I jump back to the label before that. All right, how can I make this work in Python? The short answer is you can import this decorator and add it to the method, just called with goto. Where does this decorator come from? Well, there's actually a package on PyPI called goto statement. You import that, you add the decorator to the method, and boom, it works. And if your mind is blown, that's okay, because mine was as well when I first saw this. And how does this actually work? And there are two important things going on here that makes this actually possible. This is not my package, by the way. But there are two things that make this possible. First off, to note, and the most important thing here is this is actually valid syntax, and this is not a sort of a hack. If I write label.loop and goto.loop, I've color-coded them, but really label.loop is just saying, okay, I have a variable called label, and I want to get an attribute called loop from that label. And same with goto.loop. It's just a normal get attribute syntax. Now, I don't have these variables. I haven't declared them anywhere. So if I run this without the decorator, it will just throw a name error and exit. But what the decorator does is make sure that it actually declares these label and goto variables. And it does a bit of a hack and looks at, okay, is there any point where I'm trying to get a loop attribute from goto? And in that case, okay, was there a point where I tried to get the loop attribute from label and then modify the bytecode that comes out of this method to actually make that jump? So if I'm trying to do this, well, then actually jump to that other place. And this at least was a CPython bytecode instruction, so that's something that's very possible. And because it's valid syntax to begin with, it lets me actually add that decorator and make this sort of hack to jump there. The other approach to gotos would be something like this. And this is more similar to the basic approach where, okay, I have a global variable at the top, and then I have a method that also defines a local variable. And then you see I jump from line 5 to line 8, which is in a completely different method. And right, so I'm not restricted by being inside a method. I cannot do this thing of applying a decorator. is this possible to do in Python? And the answer is actually yes, and it's actually very brief. So I can do it with something like this, where this is my goto method. The first two lines there, module and source lines, are all about just, okay, get what is the current module that we're in, and what is the source code for that module. So just kind of retrieving that. Source code is assembling all of these lines of code, but you see not all of them. So I'm joining source lines, but starting from line -1. So I'm just getting a subset of the source code, starting from the line that I want to jump to, and then the rest of the file. And the reason is, after that we call exec, which is going to start up a new Python interpreter, and that code that I just assembled is, well, the first line is going to be the line that I want to jump to. So I'm starting up a new interpreter. The first line is the line I want to jump to, so that's where it's going to start working. And sys.exit at the end, because I no longer care about the interpreter that I have. I've started up a new one, which is going to start executing at the place I want to jump to. So this works in general. If we wanted to make it even more powerful, we have to also do some manipulation of that code. So in the example that we had, we're jumping to a line inside another method. But that line is then, because it's inside a method, it's going to be indented. And the problem with that is I'm then starting up a new interpreter where the first line is indented, and that's not going to be valid syntax. So I have to look at, okay, how indented is it? Remove that indentation, and then do the same thing for the rest of the, adjust the indentation for the rest of the file, but that's just string manipulation. Also retrieve any local variables that were defined in the previous method before I made the jump so that they still exist. But we can do that with the inspect module, and then the same thing as before. So if we have, this is the example that I just showed. So if we have something like this where we have a global variable and then a local variable, and I'm jumping from within one file to another, within one method to another, I run this. I can actually get it to work. I don't have to make any CPython changes to get this running. Well, we actually get this. And the reason is, if we take another look, from line 5, we're jumping to line 8, but that's not a method call. I'm just jumping to line 8. So what happens after that? It's line 9, which is blank, and then line 10 calls foo, and we're starting up all over again. So this becomes an infinite loop. And this is sort of the scary part about the goto statement. But it's scary, but it also works, which is fun. If you want to look more closely at how this actually works, this is a package that I published. I called it NSFW goto because this is not safe for work. So please, it's not recommended by anyone. But that's it, right? So that would be some kind of example or reference implementation that could go into a PEP document such as the one we saw before. And of course, that's something that would go through a lot of discussion within the community. But it started with, it all started with my curiosity or passion for an old text-based role-playing game. How can I convert that into Python? Well, I need gotos, and then that led me down this dark path. The port of that game is far from done, so maybe it will be a topic for a future talk. I think there will be more problems than just the gotos. But just diving into that has taught me a lot about Python internals. So I hope this showed you something of that as well. If you do want to try it at some point, someone has actually put this on like a JavaScript implemented basic interpreter, so you can run this. But yeah, special thanks to Kim, Viggo, and Ulle, who originally wrote this game. They were, I think, 10, 12, and 14 years old at the time. And I've had a lot of fun with it. And right, so even if this was all in good fun and sort of, goto, not a good idea, you might still be thinking about those nested loops. this is still quite nice. Like goto in general, yes, you can create all sorts of wacky things, but wouldn't this be actually kind of nice to have in a lot of situations? And the nice thing about sort of the PEP system here is that there actually is a PEP on this exact topic. This is PEP 3136, labeled break and continue. It's funny to read because it very clearly says, okay, this is not an implementation of gotos, but it's exactly the same kind of things that we've been talking about. It's from 2007, and you can see this was a document that there was a pull request that was merged. It became an official PEP. There was a lot of discussion around it. This is from 2007. And you can see on the second line, the status, it says rejected. So ultimately, the decision was, let's not do this. It's a lot of complexity for a very specific use case. But if you want to know, why don't we have this in modern Python today, this is also the place to go to. So peps.python.org, number 3136. So the document also serves as documentation. Why? Right. And some other sources and acknowledgements. I will put the slides up somewhere later if you want to take a look. But with that, I just want to say thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you.
Super inspiring how we can take things from our childhood and build new things. And with that, for goto, we're going to go to questions.
Very nice.
Who had questions? Or I can't see. Oh, there's a question. Okay. Oh, we have two.
So when you're jumping from inside one method to another, will all those local variables, will they just leak because you're never reaching the end of the method where they belong?
Pretty much, yes. I mean, there are all kinds of problems with this, right? But what's nice about the where were you? Oh, far away. There we go. What's nice about the exec method is that it takes, so module.dict is everything that's in global scope, so that will carry on into the next interpreter. But then, yes, using the inspect module, you'll get everything that was in local scope for that method, and then that will keep going, and that, yes, that will continue to be in local scope for every other subsequent goto as well. One of many problems, yes.
Question over here. Here you go.
Hi, thank you for a very playful talk.
Thank you.
So we're kind of making fun of goto, but there are languages that actually use this, like Golang. But in those languages, they have a lot of restrictions, so you cannot jump over variable declarations, you cannot jump into scopes and so on. That kind of works. Do you ever see a possibility for a kind of restricted goto keyword to work in Python at all, or is it just a kind of playful thought that should never kind of be implemented?
I mean, I think it is a reasonable thought and idea, but I think and I think, in some sense, that is exactly what this is talking about. So this is not a general goto, but it's about, okay, I want to jump outside a loop or a lot of loops. So I think, that makes sense to me, but ultimately the community said that, no, that's not a good idea. And, there are other cases that are common as well if you're implementing like state machines, for example, that that can be nice to do. But yeah, I don't know. I think if you were to do something like that, it would have to be restricted. But yeah, I haven't seen any like important enough use cases that haven't already been rejected.
Thanks.
Awesome. So actually, it's 11 o'clock now, and unfortunately, we have to keep the time rolling. But Marcus, you're going to be here for the rest of the day?
Yes.
Perfect. So if you have any questions, definitely come talk to Marcus. Lunchtime is going to be soon. So yeah, thanks a lot. Let's give a round of applause to Marcus again.
Thank you.